Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Season 3 of the World with Nate podcast. I'm your host, Nate Allison. This podcast episode is brought to you by the following podcast sponsors. Cool Fit, a holistic lifestyle coach, mattress by appointment, Cedar Falls, and Brennan Family Dentistry. Make sure to let these sponsors know that I sent you for your next visit. I appreciate your unwavering support, guys. It means a lot to me. So Luke Schuver, I've known him for a long time. I was just chatting with him prior to the episode, and in 2014 maybe, he was working at Fit at the gym, which I still go to. And I had an awesome experience meeting you and watching you over these years, your development in the fitness game, the functional movement, the knowledge you've gained throughout the years in that. I want to chat about those things. Fatherhood, that's another thing that we both have in common. And your new passion for self-defense. All that stuff is stuff that I'm into, so I thought you would be a perfect guest for the podcast. And I know the listeners are just going to gain a lot from this. So Luke, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Nate, for having me. It's going to be fun.
Hell yeah. So the beginning of your journey with fitness, where does that begin? Mine was 7th grade football. I was terrible. C-team quarterback. I started in the gym. What'd yours look like?
I would say it started in my youth with like the physical fitness contests that we would have in Boy Scouts. I'm an Eagle Scout, and it was a big part of my life.
Very cool.
It still is a huge part of my life, just the values and stuff that I learned. But we would do a physical fitness test every year, and I won every year. So when I was young, I had a ton of success in sports, like the stud on our baseball team, basketball. It didn't matter what sport I did. I had a ton of success. But once I reached puberty and my body started to change, I got long and lanky, and things kind of fell apart. I fell out of love with sports because of all the injuries that I started to accrue throughout my athletic career. It was always ankles, calves, eventually my back.
Always hurting? What sort of things are we talking about?
Yeah. It was in basketball, it was always rolling my ankles, just constantly rolling my ankles. Could never really figure out why. And then in football, it would be hurting my back. Almost every time I got tackled, it would just feel it in the same spot all the time, right smack dab in the middle of my back. Turns out I developed scoliosis as I was going through puberty. It happens to a lot of people.
That is, will you explain that?
Yeah, of course. So scoliosis is the curvature, is when the spine essentially, as you're growing, it just doesn't grow straight for whatever reason. I like to think of the spine like the stem of a flower.
Okay.
And if a flower is strong, you see it just standing straight up, pointed right towards the sun. Same thing with your spine. If you have a strong, healthy spine, stays nice and straight for the most part. You can still move it when you go into your movements. But there are a lot of people with scoliosis or other congenital structural issues with their skeleton that they're just stuck in a bad posture all the time.
And this you just developed. You hit puberty and this happened.
Yeah, well, it might have been there when a lot of kids have it when they're young. It's so hard to detect because their bones are so flexible.
Yeah.
A lot of people just grow out of it. I think almost anybody could grow out of it as long as you're doing the right things physically.
Okay.
If you're running a lot, if you're just using your body.
Active lifestyle.
Absolutely. Like wrestling is a great one.
Yeah.
You see how physical that sport is.
Heck
It develops people in a much deeper level than other sports.
Yep.
So that's one of my biggest regrets. I was like, if I could have just done wrestling, maybe
you could have fixed some of those problems.
Maybe you could have fixed those problems. Yeah, it's really the scoliosis. I like to think of it as just a weak foundation.
Okay.
You grew up with a weak foundation for whatever reason. Maybe you weren't active enough. It could be malnourishment. Could be other environmental
Lots of factors, right?
Yeah. Could be the bad water. Our town had I grew up in a small town. They had a little moment where everyone was getting sick. Like my dad even developed a cancer.
Oh, wow.
A bunch of people, there was just all these stories, and they started testing the water, and they're like, oh, our water's been bad for a long time. It had been bad for a long time. But that's all, it's irrelevant, really.
Unfortunately, those things are very prevalent. Today. We're 2023, and go to the environmental working group for you guys listening and check our water and look at the stuff that's in it. It will scare you even today for our own county that we live in.
Right.
I'm sorry to digress, but that's something that I
have to filter my water.
Hell yeah, we do.
Yeah. I assume a lot of people out there do. I suggest you do.
Absolutely.
That's a whole nother.
We could go 45 minutes talking about water quality.
And I'm no scientist on that. I would never make any egregious claims. Have you ever heard of the Berkey?
Well, that's what we have.
Yeah, I have one of those too. We have a big one. You got to get a big one if you
got
a big
it as
family.
well. Oh yeah.
Yeah. those get expensive.
Yeah.
But again, our water is very hard where I live in Waterloo, so it's an extremely noticeable difference. You can see white
Taste.
particles.
You don't taste Berkey water.
Yeah.
There's no taste.
That's
It's
the
dead
whole
water,
point.
right?
Yeah. Just
I love that.
nothingness.
I love
for
that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But, regardless of what caused the scoliosis,
Right.
it's a problem to deal with. Lots of people have that problem. There's a lot of therapies out there. They help. But when I found the functional movement is when I really started to see results.
Yeah.
Like, so I went through high school. I started lifting again, let's say after high school. I started lifting again on my own because it just became apparent to me that I wasn't developing kind of the way that I expected to.
Okay.
Every young teenager probably feels awkward.
Yep.
And then eventually they get out of it. I didn't feel like I was getting out of it. So I got back into fitness, and my dad was also into P90X at the time. You heard of that?
Yep. I know exactly what you're
He's
talking
that
about.
guy in the garage grunting away,
Heck yeah.
just fighting demons. Like he inspired me to work out because he got fit in his late 30s,
Which is awesome to see.
I just remember watching my dad walk in after a workout and being like, "I'm proud, just my dad."
Hell yeah.
That definitely stuck with me forever. I want to be that for my kids
I love
every
that.
day.
Yeah.
But once I started working out on my own, it started changing my life for the better all over the place. I was just more confident, more energy. Obviously, I wasn't stuck in that depressed, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life mood that so many young men fall into after high school.
Absolutely.
So I was pretty much dead set from that moment on that I was going to do something in fitness.
Yeah.
And I also had this burning desire to help people like my mom because she also had scoliosis and she has a lot of back issues. She's been living in pain my whole life.
That's hard to watch.
Yeah. And it's a little harder now as an adult, actually, because she's not willing to let me help her, if that makes sense.
When you now have the knowledge that you think you could
it's
provide.
It's almost like the trauma of watching her go through that and living through it vicariously.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's shaped definitely who I am. My mission in life is super simple. It's try to learn to use the broken body that I have and use that knowledge to help other people do the same thing.
I love it.
And it is a hard but very rewarding road, I would say.
Absolutely. So do you find that people are pretty perceptive once they come to you with these things that you're trying to teach them, this functional movement stuff?
At first, it's hard. It's just like anything that's really hard. The first few times are more demoralizing for people than maybe uplifting.
Yeah.
That certainly has gotten better the better I've gotten at training. One thing that I do like to always attest to is that I'm learning something new. And there's lots of misinformation out there.
Yeah.
There's just lots of going through the weeds and trying to figure out what works, trying to figure out what technique works, what techniques work for certain situations. Like every client that comes to me is an individual case. Like I loved group fitness when I was working in group fitness because of how many people you can affect at one time.
Large scale.
It is really great. That's great. What we ran into the problem was when people would have injuries, limitations, we just didn't have a way for them to keep progressing. They kind of would get stuck. They were going through, we had a maze set up, and a few people make it all the way to the end and get incredible results, but the vast majority of people get stuck somewhere in the maze based off their own limitations.
Yeah.
And I feel for people in that because I've noticed the same thing in my life. It's like my brain feels like I'm doing an athletic movement, but my body just is a little crooked.
Didn't feel like it was keeping up either.
Right.
Yeah. Huh. So when you're doing this stuff and you're going through and you're learning this stuff about your own body, that's got to be pretty humbling.
Oh, every day.
I mean, trying to correct things that are in motion for years, right?
Yep. Develop that way.
Yeah.
Videotape helps. That is videotaping yourself while you're training. If anyone out there's really avid about training themselves and mastering themselves, and I really respect people who do it all on their own. They don't need a trainer. No, it's a journey. It is this little self journey.
I like that.
And if you can do it all on your own, good. Okay, more power to you. Be independent. Take a little stress off the healthcare system so they can focus on real problems.
Yeah.
And not having to cure our type 2 diabetes. And
Yeah.
the joint thing is where once I started doing some research into how much money is spent on surgery on joint problems.
For things that you had seen in your childhood, the rolled ankles and all the time.
And then it goes deeper and deeper. You get just into gym injuries. The number of shoulder surgeries from people working out in the gym. And I'm like, well, what's missing in our shoulder training? I can tell you there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot missing.
From where you're at now.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And like, even though fitness helped me deal with a lot of developmental problems that I was having when I was a kid, I was still always riddled with injuries. It was kind of my thing. I was like the injured guy all the time. If it was one thing, I'd fix that, and then something else would get injured. And that's how a lot of physical therapy and chiropractic and more traditional ways of healing the body, they go about focusing on the area that's hurt, strengthening that, and then kind of trying to get back to normal life. But when the system itself is so out of whack or not calibrated,
absolutely,
usually you just get an injury just goes to another spot.
Right.
You're stressing
you compensate
your knee.
then.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I think I fixed my knee. Really, you compensated.
Now you got a kink in your neck.
Chain. Exactly.
That's been there.
It's always hard dealing with clients too who, like, everyone wants to understand when they're going through something terrible.
Yeah.
So they'll try to justify. They'll be like, I heard it doing this exercise. I'm just not going to do that exercise anymore.
Right.
That was one of the most frustrating things to me, like as a personal trainer.
Yeah.
You've decided you have a limitation and you're not going to solve it.
Yeah.
You're going to limit yourself. And I've seen that road. I've watched people, like, my obsession with movement really started when I was a kid, watching ESPN, like watching highlights every morning. It kind of became my personality to be the kid that knew every score of every game. And it was because I like to wake up early.
Heck
but
yeah.
my mom sleeps in because she's in a lot of pain. She never gets good sleep. And my dad would work night shift, and he'd come home and go to sleep. So I was always get myself ready for school, stuff like that. So I just wake up and I swear ESPN raced me.
I can hear it right now coming on. Yeah,
same.
Dude.
It was so, and it was really nice to just hear a man's strong, confident men's voices every morning. It empowered me, and it made me want to play sports. But there was also times where I noticed things like, why is that person able? Like, why is Barry Sanders able to do the things he's able to do?
That's cool to hear.
Yeah.
Why can he move the way that he
How
moves?
does he do it?
Yeah.
And a lot of time, I don't think people have known for a long time, and I think things have changed recently because of fancy cameras.
Absolutely.
Slow
Slowing
motion
it down.
video. Once we were able to, like, a lot of the courses I've done, continuing education courses, like through Functional Patterns, the shirt I'm
let's
wearing.
hear about them. Heck yeah.
I found this guy on the internet when I was battered and broken, and it seemed like he was trying to solve the same problems I was trying to solve, but he had been grinding. Like, he had over 700 videos on YouTube just free to people.
Wow.
And he was kind of starting this company from the ground up, like a real good grassroots movement, because he doesn't have any formal education whatsoever.
Yeah.
He was just a personal trainer from San Diego. His name's Naughty Aguilar. He's a very controversial figure. He has a lot of other views about life.
Controversial.
Yeah.
That word gets thrown a lot today.
Mm-hmm.
He is solid in his beliefs.
Yeah.
So that makes him controversial.
Right. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. People like to think you should stick to your lane.
Yeah.
Well, if you're into fitness, you should just stick.
That's
to
the only thing you can care about, right?
Right. Or when people who play sports should never stand up for anything.
Right.
You should just dribble a ball, stuff like that. It's sort of the same concept. He gets the same flack, but if you just go to their website, functionalpatterns.com, and you see the result, they have a results page.
Yeah.
There's just so many people who were living in utter despair, whether they had cerebral palsy, they were stroke victims, or had terrible scoliosis, much worse than mine ever was. I only had a slight curve. Some people, like a lot of people in my family, it seems to be genetic. A lot of people on my mom's side have 36-degree curves that they have to get surgically repaired.
Wow.
My cousin just got hers done on her 18th birthday.
Wow. So young.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, because fusing your spine is not going to fix the problem entirely.
Yeah.
It handicaps people entirely. Once your spine can't rotate, you can't develop your trunk, your core. And anyone who gets their spine fused, they're immediately just going to see a deterioration in their health as soon as they get back. They think they're back and they're good to go, and other things are just going to start to break down. If you're not moving your spine, your limbs are going to take more torque. They're going to get twisted up. Your joints are going to get torn apart. It's sad. It is very,
spine.
It's ultimately very sad.
I did not, until just recently, the last couple of years, doing some more self-education on this, I didn't realize that how important it is, the stretching and the keeping yourself, being able to touch your toes when you're standing up. And how many people, and I'm 35 now, how many people my age just can't reach down, touch their toes, or groan when they pick up something on the ground. And that is not who I want to be.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So we got to do something about that, right?
Yeah. I don't want people to get worse as they age. I would love to see them get better.
Yeah.
At least reach your full potential, and then try to maintain that as long as possible and set a good example for the people around you.
Yeah.
And I just feel like so many people are in a place where they can't solve this problem on their own, no matter how much determination, willpower, or discipline that they may have. The knowledge that the human body is incredibly complicated.
Absolutely.
Like, I think it's much more complicated than people who are working in the professional realm would even like to admit. Like, a lot of times we want to feel like people want to feel like they're the expert.
Absolutely.
They also want to make people feel comfortable in your care.
Absolutely.
You would want to be I would not want a doctor who wasn't confident.
Right.
But
you might make it out of this surgery.
Yeah. But he's honest.
Yeah.
You know? And it's a fine line that we kind of play this game of life with people's emotions and wanting to change, and how change is something that you see a timeline and you say, well, it'll take this long. But you don't see all the obstacles.
No.
You don't
or
see
every day.
Yeah.
The consistency it requires, right?
Or all the things that could just go wrong.
Every step of the way.
Yeah, for sure. But I think people are definitely waking up to the idea that, just being active in this day and age with with the poor food and all of the, I guess, even environmental factors. There's a really big fear that even if you're eating healthy food, that the food that we're eating isn't as nutritious,
right,
as it used to be.
Absolutely.
Whether that be because of the soil degradation or chemicals.
Right.
Or
not
a scientist.
Right.
I wouldn't know. I can't solve that problem. I only can focus on the downstream effect, how it's affecting people in their bodies, physical deterioration, degeneration from one generation to the next.
Yeah.
We've seen people's jaws continue to get smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
We've seen
nose and
young
breathing
men
problems
just become more frail.
Yeah.
And I assume people's testosterone levels are lower.
They are. Yes.
I assume.
Yes.
It goes much deeper and more vulgar, I guess. Like, I've heard, it's even human taint sizes are shrinking.
Yes, I've heard that as well. If you get into that sort of science,
it's very scary.
Yeah, it is very scary about what's happening and our inability now among younger generations to even reproduce. Those questions are serious now.
Yeah,
I have a wife in the medical profession who's a medical professional, and those are things that come up between us talking about that stuff.
And you have 4 healthy kids,
yes.
right? I have 3 healthy kids. What a blessing.
What a blessing,
yes.
The
things that can go wrong and it not be at all your fault
absolutely
is so sad.
Absolutely.
But like I said, I can only focus on trying to solve the problems that I can fix in the time that I have with the people that I have around me. It's such a journey, and I've just learned to be very patient with it because I am learning something new.
Yeah.
I'm also learning it for myself, and I'm trying to better myself. And once I feel like I've reached my full potential,
you think you're going to get there, Luke?
No, that's the whole point.
Isn't that the life?
Yeah, that's the whole point. You never get there. You keep reaching for it, and you just never get there, and you become okay with that.
Yeah.
You have to be kind of okay with, I'm racing for a finish line that I'll never get to.
Keeps getting deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just keeps getting further and further away. But you can't stop, can't turn around, focus on things that aren't important. You got to stay true to the path.
Absolutely.
Listen to whatever your soul is telling you to do.
Absolutely.
Mine's pretty simple. Help people with their physical pain and problems because I can. I would love to all the time just work with athletes. That's what a lot of people who get into movement and exercise science would love to do. I think they would love to work with athletes all the time. It's kind of easy street. You're dealing with someone whose body is already
top performer.
I like to think of it as an intelligence. Like some people are very book smart. Some people are very common sense smart.
Yeah.
Some people might call an athlete dumb, but are they really? Their brain and their body communicate so well that they can do things with their body that you could never do.
Right.
So it's a different type of intelligence.
I like that. Yeah, I've never heard it.
We call it KQ, kinetic intelligence. It's a simple way to like look at an athlete, and that's one thing I love about MMA. Even like, there's not a lot of guys in MMA who have extreme athletic abilities. Comparatively to other sports, because those athletes are in the other sports making money in football. Like I'm sure you've probably heard this before, but a lot of the guys, like we could have a lot faster sprinters, like on our Olympic team and our USA sprinting team. But all those guys are running backs in the NFL,
making millions.
Yeah. That's where the money is, and that's same thing with every sport. Yeah, for sure. I love like that's why people love football. It's the freak of the freaks. Like, the freaks of nature. What they can do is incredible.
Yes.
And it's extremely entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
And I'm all for it. I'm not all for the CTE, the brain damage.
No, that's terrible.
Whatever we can figure out to help them.
It needs to be addressed, and it needs to be taken seriously. And I don't think that ownership has given it enough,
It's one of those things, too, where it's such a big monster at this point.
Yeah.
I don't think you're ever going to take the helmets off.
Right.
I don't think you'll ever make the helmet safe.
Right.
Unfortunately, there's no way to change the fact that two full-grown men are running headfirst into each other at full speed.
Physical specimens.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Primed out.
I think where it falls short is it wouldn't be that way in nature.
Right.
Like, say two full-grown, extremely
grizzly
bears are running at each other. The bears don't have as much mobility, I guess. So they probably would just run into each other and then scratch. I don't know what they would do.
Yeah.
But a human would most likely try to throw in some trickery.
Yeah. Fall to the side, something.
Juke. Like that's where the juke came from.
Yep.
That's where it evolved.
We have brains.
Something like that.
No, yeah. When you say, so my wife's brother played pretty long career as an offensive lineman and got up to 300 and some pounds. Mm-hmm. And he still could sprint like a sprinter. He was awesome at ping pong. Shit like that, you're like, how are you even good at this? When you're saying that connection, absolutely. I've seen it firsthand. And it's like someone that big, 6'6", like 330 pounds. And he beat a high school sprinter who's in state probably, Right. So, yeah, I've seen it firsthand, and that is just crazy to me too.
Yeah. It's fun. It is fun, though, because there's always those guys that, look at them, like buddies. Like, I've had buddies who I didn't think they could play. Because I judge them physically.
Yeah.
Be like, well, you let yourself go a little bit. But once you get on a court and they can shoot like no other, it's like, I see.
Noted.
Yes.
Heck yeah.
It is about discipline is so important. I wish I would have learned that with my body as a kid. Like, I wish that was something that is more pushed. I know it is nowadays. Like, it's great to see things like Ninja U around.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Man, if I would have had one of those when I was a kid,
I say that same shit, dude. Luke,
I grew up in a small town, and there was nothing. There was just your basic sports.
Yeah.
And there was getting into trouble. Yeah. And I eventually went from one, got bored with one, and went to the other.
Yeah.
But yeah, martial arts would have been really good when I was a kid.
Heck
there
yeah.
was a taekwondo class for one summer at our YMCA,
yeah.
but it wasn't very fun.
Yeah.
It wasn't very fun. It's definitely something I'm glad I do now, and I'm glad I live somewhere where there is so much access
available. Yeah,
this is just the Cedar Valley is just a great place to live.
I love hearing that. I love it here too, dude.
It's got the small town feel still.
Yeah, like you can still go out and know people in the community.
I've been even to like towns like Ankeny. They feel too big to me.
Yeah,
I know people laugh at that, but like I like the small town feel.
I love hearing that.
I love Cedar Falls, Waterloo. It's kind of spread out. It's got so much personality.
Mm-hmm.
So many different areas.
To do. Yeah.
A million things to do.
Thousands of miles of trails.
Yeah, that's the best.
Hell yeah.
It's the simple poor man's way to just get yourself outside, get your kids outside, get active, breathe some fresh air.
all important things.
Yeah, it goes so much deeper, just connecting to nature.
Absolutely.
I kind of don't like using that word. It's really kind of hippie-ish.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is what it is.
It is.
Who gives a crap, right? It's important to do.
I don't really feel connected. I just feel
And it's things
more
we've
peaceful.
lost touch with.
Absolutely.
It's things that we've thrown to the side in today's society that we don't think have as much value as they do. And it turns out those things have immense value.
Yeah, you can't change our DNA as quickly as
we would like it.
As we would like it. Yeah. Exactly. That's one of the scariest things is we were making the technology, and we have all these things, advancements in technology, and I don't know how much we're going to keep up.
Right.
Sometimes that's my big fear.
Have we kept up?
Kept up?
Yeah. Yeah. I asked my thing when we start talking about, Neuralink and augmented reality and virtual reality and all those things.
Well, how poorly we've handled social media, we obviously have not caught up.
Yeah, that should be a clear indication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're all getting there. Again, that's another thing. Pick your, it's a tool. Social media can be a wonderful gateway.
You can build a community of like-minded people, 100%. Thousands and thousands of people across the world.
All the information that's out there.
Absolutely.
You can sift through it.
Yep.
It's not fun when you hear that one person say, "Oh, you can't believe everything you hear on the internet."
Yeah.
You want to be like, are you a detective? Like, sometimes you should be a detective. You figured it out. No, we all knew that.
Yeah.
We all know that.
Everyone's aware.
Yeah, we're all very aware. But there's also freedom on the internet. There's just access.
Absolutely.
My dad always tells me, he's like, I had to go to the library, read it out of a book, and they might have been lying to me.
Absolutely. You never know what you're going to get. Now we have access to everything right at our fingertips.
Yeah.
And why not strive to make that a good thing, right?
Teach kids how to use it.
Hell yeah.
Would be a good first step.
So what sort of, now you had mentioned that you, courses and education inside of this stuff, what sort of things have you done in that regard?
Gotcha. So I started off at UNI going for leisure, health, and human services. Like before I even went to college, I'd already decided I was going to be a personal trainer of sorts, own my own gym someday, just to help as many people as possible, and I don't need the machine behind me telling me what to do all the time. Like my mom would have really been happy if I would have just became a doctor like she always wanted. So she named me Luke. Yeah. Like patron saint of doctors. And it was very ingrained in me my whole life. I did really well in school. I scored in the 95th percentile for everything. And I just had to. But I realized once I got older, I realized that wasn't me, or it wasn't really like, if you're just super dedicated, you can be really good in school. It's not I don't think it's an accurate measure of intelligence.
I totally would agree with that statement.
Because I am the first to tell you I'm a complete idiot. Like there's no way I scored. Even when I was hanging out with the smart kids, I'd just be like, I don't know how I got here. I'm just good at tests.
You felt like the black sheep in there, 100%. Or what?
There was a couple of. My best friend was the same scenario, but he was very super intelligent, but also super awkward.
Yes.
But he probably was super smart. But I just basically listened to everything he said, and I was smart.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
By cause.
I have a smart friend, have a big giant friend. You got to have those friends.
Absolutely.
You got to have a good diverse group.
I absolutely agree.
I've always had that. That's one thing has definitely shaped me. It's a super good diverse group of friends all through my upbringing. Once I got to college, it was a little bit different story. I was really just on my own. Doing a whole new thing. Fitness was something none of my friends were interested in at all.
So what sort of things did your friend group? Because it's cool that you
we were in
say
a band.
That. Okay.
Yeah, you can just imagine what type of kids we were. We were in a rock and roll tribute band.
Heck yeah.
Called Stone Mountain.
Huh.
We played like Beatles hits,
all right.
CCR hits.
I would go hang out on a Friday and listen to this right now.
Fun.
Probably.
Yeah, it was super fun. Like we'd play in Clear Lake. On Thursday, what is it, Thursdays on Main or something? I don't know it was a long time ago.
But you actually had gigs.
Yeah. My friends are very talented musicians still to this day, and they still make music.
What was your role in the band?
I was the token kid. Like I was just there.
That was your
I was just there. My friend Corey was an incredible guitarist, rest in peace. He was in Houston, trying to pursue his music career with my other friend Anthony, who was our singer. So Corey was our lead guitarist. Anthony is our singer. They eventually got together and made their own band, and they have some music even on Spotify. But my friend, unfortunately, he died a couple years ago. Tragically, he was hit by a car while he was riding his bike in Houston. So that was, yeah, that was it. Well, thank you, but it was hard because, like, I had the hardest part is seeing his family, and he's not there. That's definitely the hardest part. I love, like, they were a huge part of my life. They were a very successful, like, well-to-do family in our town. They owned a printing service, and, like, he had everything. You know, his house was the cool house to go to.
Hang out.
Ping pong tables.
Yeah.
Goat car, you know, all that fun,
all the
fun stuff. But he basically turned his garage into a studio for music, and that was what we did through high school. That's where I basically spent almost all of high school, was trying to make music with them. I am not talented at all. I played bass.
Okay.
Yeah, bass is the person that is not good at guitar.
That's who they put at bass?
Yeah, you got to rank yourself. Everybody wants to play guitar.
Yeah.
Whoever's the worst plays bass.
And hey, it is what it is,
I should have been the manager. They were young, didn't want to listen to me. They had their own ideas. But
yeah.
Or I probably could have sang if I tried.
Yeah.
But I was never really into it, I guess, nearly as much as my friends.
Yeah.
As much as I was just always in awe and in wonder of how talented they were. And I just liked being around people who were driven.
Yeah,
people who were creative as well. Very different from what I'd grown up. I guess I grew up super just basic Iowan, like hunting, fishing.
Where did those things come from?
My dad's side is big into hunting. They used to be, I guess. My dad, he still does it. Yeah, he still goes out and turkey hunts, deer hunts from time to time with his bow. But growing up, we did all of it. We'd shoot ducks, geese. I guess I was just always along for the ride. I fell out of love with it in high school. I had a bad experience where I injured a deer, didn't kill it, and I kind of gave up after that point. Just something felt really weird. But now as I'm older, I'm like, I need to get back to it, or just get over. I guess I wasn't aware of the guilt. I was like, who cares? I missed, but like I was actually feeling the guilt of hurting that animal. Yeah. No one else around me was saying, "Oh, you're just feeling guilty that you hurt it." I figured that out years later, but
as a young man,
that's what helps you get over stuff.
Yes,
too.
absolutely.
That's what helps you get, because you don't always have to just. I know a lot of young people want to kind of throw all their past out the window and create their own future, but a lot of those things that created your past, like there's meaning ingrained in you, and if you can find a way back to some of those things, they're very, very rewarding.
Absolutely.
So like I've gotten back to hunting with my dad, and it's been a really good experience. Like,
That's cool to hear.
I'm glad that I do that now, as opposed to when I was in high school. It was more like I'm just cold and I'm mad that this happened.
Yeah,
but it's another one of those things. You grow up doing whatever your parents do. You just emulate their behavior.
Yeah.
My mom, like I said, I love her to death, but she emulates a lot of bad behaviors that I've had to unlearn.
Yeah.
But also at the same time learn to love her for who she is.
Absolutely.
While I'm trying to fix myself.
And you're on your own journey.
Right.
In your own time, in your own space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's something I can relate to, you know. Everybody's got a mom.
Does.
Where we're at right now with our own journeys of being parents and then trying to have that relationship. Sometimes it's hard because they've been through their own things that have shaped who they are, 100%. Right? And it's easy to forget that stuff.
Yeah, it's very easy to forget what other people have been through.
Yeah.
When you just, in those moments of frustration, it's so easy.
Yeah.
My mom's been through just the worst of it, so I can't. I have all the respect for her. Just every day she gets up and does something. She's tough, but it's a win every time I get a call from her. It's a win.
Yeah,
it's one of those things I almost started to expect that I wouldn't at an early age. Same thing with kids. Like I almost pushed. It was like you were saying earlier. Like we're worried about fertility with younger people. I felt that I was definitely. I purposely had kids very young because I was afraid that I wouldn't be fertile at this point in my life.
That's something that you thought about.
Yeah, when I was 20, for sure. That was something it was so prevalent already. It was already a problem in society.
Yes.
Unfortunately, doesn't seem like anything's been done.
No.
So it's, again, those seeing the problems in society and living long enough to see, oh, no one's going to fix it. I guess I got to take responsibility for these. I got to take action. Like one way or the other, I got to figure out one way or another to make this better.
Yeah.
whatever that is. And for me, it's always been functional movement, I guess.
It's where it always goes right back to. No, that doesn't sound silly at all.
It's helped me with literally everything.
You're fixing problems for yourself and then fixing those same problems that you've conquered or you're working through and doing that with others. That's the most honorable thing you can do, man. If you ask me. I mean, who am I? But
it's very well. You get to see people when they're vulnerable. You get to see people.
Absolutely.
You get to see people overcome obstacles
and help them through it.
Yeah. You also get to see people see something that they didn't think was possible.
Yeah, of themselves even.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I've trained one of my probably the most rewarding was this 80-year-old lady that I would train, and she just had an extreme hunchback. You see as people get older.
Absolutely.
You have this thing called a deep front line or a longitude. It's part of the deep front line, which is a fascial network on the front side of your body.
Okay.
And as you age, there's this thing called a longitudinal ligament. Think about your spine. Like you can see the back of your spine, right?
Correct.
On your back, but what's the front side of your spine look like?
Right.
Can't tell. There's a ligament that goes all the way down there. And as a lot of people age, depending on, again, environmental factors, hydration, when people are extremely dehydrated, it actually shortens. And that
shrinks.
It'll shrink. It'll just, think of any other muscle or tendon in your body, it gets real tight. And when the muscle is tight, it doesn't function really well.
Yeah, you're blowing my mind here, dude.
So if your ligaments,
I love it.
Well, that's what this whole book's about. I mean, when it's just all new information. They're constantly discovering new things about the body.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to adapt on a dime. Like as soon as I hear about new information, I try to figure out, is this something I need to look at? Will it change how I train people?
Yeah.
And there was no bigger change in how I train people than when I discovered or learned about fascia. Have you? I'm sure have you heard that word thrown around?
Yep. Dive deep.
It's
as much time as we have.
It's actually very simple.
Okay,
it's
perfect.
very simple because it's
that works for Nate well.
Yeah, think of it this way: like in your body, the muscle tissue. Think of that as red tissue.
Okay.
Think of all the other tissue as white tissue.
Easy enough for me to do.
You have tendons and ligaments. Everybody knows what those are.
Yep.
They're really not important, to be honest. As long as they're there and they're strong, that's great.
Okay.
I'm not a big believer in stretching ligaments, stretching tendons, but what you can build elasticity in is the fascia within our body. And it's actually the largest sensory organ in our entire body. It's in your eyeballs, it's in your brain, it's in every muscle, it's interwoven into your skin. It's essentially everywhere. Okay. And in 2018, it was finally put into the medical books as an organ.
Okay.
But people have been studying it for probably about 30 years.
So something in terms of skin, of hair on your body, of that's how big this is. And just in 2018, they decided it's real.
To give it a real label and to put it in the books. Yeah. Everyone's been if you're a personal trainer, you're training fascia. Yeah. Well, you might not know about it, but you're training it.
Right.
You're training it all the time. And really, it's more of a way of how muscles connect to each other.
Okay.
A lot of times when people think of anatomy, they think of the old school anatomy books where they will take a muscle and chop it off at two ends, and then they'll teach you the contractile theory of how a muscle contracts and stretches, and that's how it functions.
Okay.
That works on a two-dimensional basis, like on a lever, like my bicep shortens, my elbow moves, but it's just in a really limited context.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense. So it's not like that's not something you should learn. But people learn that and then they base their training solely off of the one thing they learned. They're like, well, my bicep does this, so I train my bicep.
And the complexity of the human body is very vast compared to a kindergarten level of learning.
You call it an isolation model. They use an isolation model. They educate people about the muscle, about what it connects to, just the next thing down the line. They don't teach you the whole body-wide connection.
Hell yeah.
And not to keep it overly simple, it's if you learn about fascia a little bit, all you have to do is kind of learn the map, is what we call it. It's called, this book itself is called Anatomy Trains, because it looks like train tracks moving, or it's essentially how force is think of if you had to transfer force in a train, it would move from one point to the other.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in the human body. If you're trying to transfer force, you would transfer it from one point to another.
Yeah.
Like say when someone throws a baseball, they're transferring all the weight from their right leg to their left leg as they go through an extreme range of motion in their arm lines, in their torso, in their hips. It's a very integrated movement: throwing, running, standing,
the things
walking.
we do every day.
Yeah. And that's what
now
I
it's
train.
starting to click, Luke.
Yeah.
It's starting to click for me.
It's
you
real
got
simple.
it, dude. Hell yeah.
It's real simple. I train people to have a stronger foundation.
Yeah.
If you can stand stronger, you're stronger. If you can walk more fluently with less pain, if you can walk longer, you're more durable, you're more persistent.
Absolutely.
If you can run effective, like I think most people stop sprinting.
Absolutely.
Once 19, they turn 30, like
20.
There's a silly stat out there. It's like 90% of people will never sprint after 30.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. That was one thing that really stuck out to me because, like I said, when I was a kid, I had a ton of success with sprinting and explosive things.
You were the guy.
I just had a lot of type 2 fibers, I guess. But then once I got older, or even when I was just a gym guy, when I was just adding on muscle, like I remember one time we took at Next Level, we took everybody to an outdoor class, and we got to do some long sprints in the grass. And my body felt so terrible. It felt like I was carrying around water jugs. The muscles, essentially a muscle is a water bag, and none of my water bags were communicating with each other. I had focused solely on isolation training for so long and things like calisthenics and explosive movements and testing my athletic capabilities that I had negated to focus on the things that make a strong foundation for an athlete.
I love hearing this.
Which are being able to stand with strong, impeccable posture. If you can, again, walking seems so minuscule, but there's so many people the first thing I would recommend to anyone out there trying to get healthy is just walk as much as you can. Get a dog. Walk that dog. I purposely do not put a fence
I got kids
at my house.
Walk my kids.
Walk your kids. That's so true.
For real.
I want to get, you see those the things you put on the back of your bike?
Yeah.
I want to find a way just to attach it to me.
And go.
And just go.
Hell yeah.
That's what I would say would be a little bit more functional.
Yeah.
I have a bike. I have a problem with bicycles because of my friend. But
yeah.
But also, it's one of those things. I biked a lot. I was very into it when I was young. Like it's a lot of things. I noticed I have a lot of guy friends who are real young in their 20s, and they almost every one of them like, I'm gonna get a nice bike. I'm gonna start biking all over the place.
Yeah, it's easier than running, Luke.
That's
why.
That's exactly right.
That's why.
I tell them that.
Yeah.
I go, no.
And they don't like that, do they?
I go, hey, I've been there. I did. I spent my 20s. I spent 20 to 25 destroying my body. I spent 25 to 30 fixing my body. Like
Absolutely.
If I can give you any advice, skip that first.
I love that.
5 years of torture. Like young men who want to see what they're capable of, they can do a number on themselves. Kids are strong. Like young men are strong, and if they want to tear their body apart, they can do it. Like there's a lot of times where you're doing an exercise and you think, well, this is so hard. Well, it might be so hard because you're in the wrong position.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of, it's just, my mindset has changed so much about exercise. I almost try to make exercises easier, I guess, if that makes sense. It's a silly way to think about it, but I don't isolate anything ever.
So what are you saying? Like just compound movements? What sort of stuff do you do?
It's almost artistic in a way.
I like that.
Because you have to work with what you have at the moment. Like think of a person as a clay model. They're stuck in that position already. Their fascia is conditioned. It's like, so I said, as a sensory organ. It's so much easier to train it with your brain than just forcing physical. Like with your muscles, you can just damage them and they'll grow bigger.
Yep.
With your fascia, it doesn't necessarily work that way. There has to be that a real mind-muscle connection. Like when people talk about mind-muscle connection, they're actually talking about mind-fascia connection, because your brain can't connect directly to the muscle fibers themselves.
But it is connecting to the fascia.
The fascia interweaving, and it's like, imagine like Spider-Man's webs, just interwoven.
Or like a network of mushrooms, spores.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. It's more like your central nervous system.
Yeah.
Like, your central nervous system is everywhere, and there's nerves running through your body. You just can't perceive them.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It really is just think of it as the stretchy tissue within your body that allows us to be mobile.
Yeah.
And one thing that's kind of interesting is like you can build, I guess muscle builds about 5 times faster than fascia builds.
Huh.
So that's where people get into trouble in the gym.
Absolutely, I
focusing
can see.
the muscle, and especially with extreme athletes, we've seen so many ACL tears in the NFL, so many people's careers cut short, and you can basically blame the preventative.
You found a link.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the amount of ACL tears is insane, and they're building up athletes' legs to be so strong and so explosive.
Yeah,
That they're just tearing themselves apart.
Shaquan Bark, the running back for the New York Giants, squatting like 600 pounds, being like 5'9", 5'10", dude, 200 and some pounds.
Right.
It's insane what some of these athletes are doing.
Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not against those things, but the prevalence that they use them in their training, it's cult-like behavior. They're religiously hit squats.
Yeah.
Like they religiously hit deadlifts. And even when I was going to UNI, it was something I ran into everyone's looking, some people, not everyone, some people are looking for their job to be easy. And
absolutely. It's human nature, right?
It is,
like
exactly.
It would be crazy to think that there's not people out there who are crazy successful or in great positions that aren't taking the easy route.
Right.
Like, we're at the age
especially
where we realize that. Yeah, especially if it's
works,
working.
if it sells.
Yeah.
You keep
absolutely.
Doing it. In an elite sports, it's a completely different realm because it's competition.
Yep.
It's not about helping everybody.
Right.
It's the strongest will survive.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's totally fair. But when I was at UNI, we were so focused on Olympic lifting, which I loved learning about. I swear I've learned about every facet of fitness out there.
But don't you think that makes you more appealing to the overall picture, what you're trying to do, learning those things? Mm-hmm. It all builds on each other. Would you not agree?
For sure.
Yeah.
It does. I've learned it, and it's like, I want, especially if I'm training someone and they can do it, I'm going to teach it to them.
Yeah.
But for where I was at that moment, I guess, I thought there was so many other things that athletes, even in just the athletic realm, there's so many more things that they could be doing to make them even better.
Yeah.
Which is what I, as a fan of sports, want to see. Like, I want to see. I might be one of the only people who are saying bring back the juice in baseball.
Nope, you're not. Mark McGwire and Sammy, put them back and hit 70 home runs a year.
Let's go. I want that right
for real.
now.
Me too.
Same thing with any athlete. I want to see them just live to their fullest potential. Like I would have loved to. I should have worked up the nerve to go try to show David Johnson some stuff back in the day.
Yeah, you had mentioned that. Being
just
here.
Seeing those elite athletes, it's super inspiring. Like how is it not? If you see someone who can do something so physically, the chances of you going to work out have just gone way up.
Yeah.
The same thing if someone in your life is tearing you down, your chances of tearing someone else down or feeling down go way up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So trying to surround yourself with the people who are savages is super. It makes perfect sense if I'm in school and I wanna train specimens. I know so many people that fell into that, and I still would love to do it, but I get much more from helping people who really need it.
Yeah.
Obviously.
I mean, the ability to stand up straight is quite a feat when we're talking about when people get older, they shrink, They
shrink.
Yeah.
It's really that dehydration of the fascia. It's shrinking within your body.
Makes complete sense when
you're becoming less mobile.
Yeah. And if you're not stretching it, if you're not using it, you're losing it. Mm-hmm. Like every day we're dying, right? Like I know that's grim and it's a terrible way to look at things.
No, it's the best way to look.
But if you're not working against that, then yeah, you are dying.
Right. If you're not, Jocko says something like, if you don't use it today, like you will not be better. Like you're not going to wake up tomorrow and be better.
No, it's not going to be better tomorrow.
It's just going to be a step back.
Yeah.
And I definitely try to remind myself that I try to teach that to your kids is super hard, just to teach them to be hungry. Mm-hmm. I want everyone to be hungry, whether it be for more information or just for a better life or for a better life for the people around them. Anything they can do, your body, fixing your body and making sure you feel good in the vessel that you're here with.
The only one
you ever get.
Yeah.
And you might not have got the best one.
Yeah.
Like
it's a gamble, right?
Yeah,
it's a lottery,
really
and we don't
is.
have any choice over that.
No choice.
No.
Just if I can make that person's life easier, fantastic. And then hopefully they'll pass it on.
Hell yeah.
Like I had a guy, Lee, who he lost over 200 pounds.
Wow.
And it wasn't intense exercise.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He didn't have to do, it wasn't like most people have seen
The Biggest Loser.
The Biggest Loser, exactly. Yeah. It wasn't that.
You weren't killing him every day.
No, we were figuring out very complex problems as to why his body just did not function the way it did. And I was also trying, and he also loved to golf. Golfing has a lot of movement, and it uses the slings. The slings is something I'd love to get more into because that's probably the biggest element that people go to the gym. And if someone who's just an avid gym goer and they start to learn about their slings, the oblique slings and how you can work your torso and hips
and core,
a little bit deeper.
Is that?
Obviously, yeah, the core's right there.
Okay.
You just that you kind of work it. You work it by I like to think of like the core, your diaphragm, everything in the middle. This shouldn't be something that people have learned to kind of mind muscle connection, like they learn to isolate.
Yeah.
And when the real problem occurs when you take that mindset and you
use it everywhere else.
Yeah, when you apply it to something that's supposed to be very dynamic in nature, or just natural in nature, you'll end up with a lot of problems. Like I did that. I always had a shredded six-pack, but you could bet all the money in the world that my back hurt too, that my neck hurt.
Yeah.
I was stuck in a scoliosis or a kyphosis, which is just a rounding of the upper back.
It's amazing when you look at your before and after pictures. It's amazing.
I wish pictures did. I always feel like pictures don't do justice.
You don't think so?
No, but
you're standing up straight.
Right.
You weren't.
But that's what I'm saying. It's probably just because I'm hyper-analyzing it.
Yes, and you've seen it every day.
And the thing is, I've made so many mistakes along the way. Like if you look at my posture results online, like you'll see there's a point where I'm standing too far up. Like I'm hyper-extending parts of my spine. There's the spine, like the lumbar spine has to be in the perfect position. The thoracic spine has to be in the perfect position. The cervical
Very
spine.
Complicated.
It is complicated, and it just it has so much to do with other things. Like if your arms if you don't have proper function of your arms, it's actually going to start to deteriorate and put a bunch of stress on your cervical spine or the upper portions of your thoracic spine. When people do when you focus more on the mirror muscles of your core, you lose the ability to rotate your core.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense. And everybody's seen. It's like we love sport. Most people love sports. It's almost like ingrained. Like, but you see people run and throw all the time in sports, but running and throwing is not thought about in the gym for whatever reason. I never questioned it. Like I just assumed that someone had already thought this all through, and was just giving us the best information. But really, I was just doing the most popular exercises because that was what was most prevalent. Like a lot of people train their shoulders, they use both arms. One thing I'd suggest people do just for fun is just try doing one arm at a time.
And why do you say that?
And it's again because you'll start to notice a lot of other tiny muscles come along for the ride.
Yeah.
You'll notice more mobility. Like in your arm, for example, like your arm, like when you throw a punch, you internally rotate all the way.
Yep.
But people don't really think what do you do with the other arm?
Right. Where's
it
that
doesn't
going?
just stay here. Well, if I do the opposite motion, essentially externally rotate my shoulder, it adds more range of motion to what I'm trying to do.
To that,
right.
Punch.
So if I'm trying to get a longer jab, it's not just gonna come from throwing a million jabs.
Yeah.
It's gonna come from figuring out those very, very fine details in the movements. And I just wanted to find a way to apply that to my strength training, because I wasn't. Now, what a lot of people can do is you can just have a normal strength program, and as long as you're active, as long as you're playing sports, doing stuff outside, you're going to be just fine.
Hell yeah.
But there's a lot of people who aren't athletic and like they don't ever want to get into sports, and the only thing they're ever going to do is maybe get a bike.
Yeah.
And or do a yoga class. And those are the people they would be much better off doing something with me first, because I can give you what functional training does is it gives you a strong foundation. So you can do
everybody can
whatever
benefit
you
from,
want.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the need for everyone.
Yeah, it gives you the freedom to go out there and make the right choice for your body. There's so many times where I feel like people are doing an activity because of their limitations. And it might not even be because that's what their heart is telling them to do.
Absolutely. I love that.
And that's sad. That's one of those things that gets me. Be like, well, if you spent 6 months with me,
we could change that crap.
You could do exactly what you want to do and everybody's life would be.
And you've seen those things with people who came to you.
Yeah.
Little nagging issues or things that people have dealt with.
For sure.
And you guys have just cleaned them up from functional movement.
That's how I started.
Yeah.
That's how I started. At Next Level, I was the guy you'd go to if you were injured.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people.
You were the rehabber.
Yeah. And I always wanted to go to school for physical therapy, and I worked for a physical therapy clinic here in town for a while, and I enjoyed that process very much, but I kept running into these obstacles or these walls that were limiting how I wanted to train people.
Gotcha.
So I simply had to step away.
Take a different
and
route.
do it entirely independently. Because, when other people start, they feel their toes feel stepped on. When you do something innovative and new,
Yeah, absolutely.
they definitely feel stepped on. They feel almost just disrespected in a way that is definitely not intentional. Those are hard waters to navigate, where you're simply trying to do something that's new, innovative, and you're trusting it because of the results you've seen.
In your own self.
Yeah.
And those closest to you.
And the clients, and I purposely would train the hardest clients, like people in wheelchairs.
Yeah. That's who you take on.
Yeah, and the harder the problem, the more knowledge you're going to learn.
That's absolutely true.
And it's not, personal training is one of those things where it's such an easy realm. It's just one-on-one with someone, working on their body. There's no way to not get them results, I guess. But it's just, how far do you want to take those results?
Yeah.
I just want to take that as far as humanly possible.
Put it to the floor.
I'm the most intense personal trainer on the planet.
But
it's not like boot camp, yelling at you the whole time. I definitely still do that. Like when you're struggling, it's nice to get yelled at.
Yeah, heck yeah.
I don't know, I'm like that. I always have to tell my martial arts coach, I'm like, you gotta be meaner to me. I was like, you gotta just tell me to quit doing that.
Yeah.
Just yell at me. I don't know if maybe that's how I grew up and that's just what I'm used to, but I think this is the truth. The truth will set you free.
Yeah.
And it's so true when it comes to your body. If you can learn some truth about your body and get over some obstacles, it gives you just a little bit more freedom, a little bit more confidence, and a little bit more will to just go out there and do the whole thing we call life.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I love it. Fatherhood. Mm-hmm. You said you started early.
Yeah.
You were nervous about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because of your own physical ailments, because of what culturally was being said.
Mm-hmm. And probably also because of what I was in the health atmosphere. And if you're someone in the health atmosphere, there's a lot of scary things out there that you're afraid to talk to people about. Yeah. Because they'll just see you as a negative person or a fear monger. There's a good word.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't ever want to try to do that. But at the same time, I have been a person, I admittingly have learned a lot from being told what not to do.
Absolutely.
And I know for a lot of people, they don't learn that way. They don't like to learn that way. For me, that worked so well because what I was doing wasn't working. My body was just, it was like I was living in the wrong body. And I just had, think of that fascial network, when there's if there's blockages in that fascial network.
What do those blockages come from? Give me an example.
Yeah, repetitive, inefficient movement. Okay. So if I have a tic, or I just have a tendency, a lot of people have I have a tendency to just tilt my head to the side.
Just naturally, that's something that you do
It's a lot of anxious tics that people have. Okay. Those anxious tics become solidified. And you can think, most people have heard of muscle imbalances.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, they exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know a lot of trainers, I've heard trainers say they're not important and stuff, and I'm like, well, depends on how bad they are.
Right.
If it's just a slight imbalance, no big deal. But if we're talking about an extreme imbalance, if you avoid that,
if you don't address it,
it's neglect. But they would rather. It's much easier. Like I said, it's just much easier to just say it's not important. That was the same thing I learned with scoliosis. Every book that I read in college, and even the first man to ever deadlift 1,000 pounds had scoliosis.
Really?
And they would tell you that. No one told you about the rest of his life.
Right.
I did some research.
What he did from the time he had scoliosis to how he got to 1,000
from 35
pounds.
to 60 was not good.
Yeah.
But setting that record that's what people will focus on.
Yeah.
But again, it's just one of those things I want to try to get as many results with fitness without any of the downfalls, without pitfalls. Yeah. I'm sure, have you ever been injured? I mean,
absolutely.
Just from lifting?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot of anything in the shoulders
and
neck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's almost impossible not to nowadays. I don't know if I think it could, again, mostly be avoided if you teach the reason I like martial arts so much, and the reason it ties into functional movement
Absolutely.
and fatherhood is I want my kids to learn how to move their bodies really well, impeccably, to a point where they just aren't in pain. Like, if I can give my kid a pain-free body at 18, I've already done him so much good. If I can give him a strong physical...
Oh, I like hearing that.
It's impossible to not be strong physically, and, well, I wouldn't say impossible because there's performance-enhancing drugs. But if you go out and get fit on your own, like, there's no chance that you didn't get stronger mentally from that.
Right,
It's
absolutely.
all interconnected. Your physical health, mental health, they are so interwoven. And mental health is so complicated, and I'm not smart enough for that, so I focus on the other side.
I like that.
I focus on the physical health. I'm a very physical person. I've always move around. Like, sitting is hard.
Yeah.
You know?
And I'm asking you to do it.
These
for
are
an hour.
nice chairs, though. So this works out.
I appreciate that.
But yeah, like, we were talking about fatherhood, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I lost you. What were you saying?
No, that's all right. I'm just curious as to, well, fatherhood as a whole.
Right.
You decided early on to have your kids.
Right.
And I was curious as to why that was. And environmental factors and all of that.
I definitely operated on fear a little when I was younger, too.
Yeah.
Just something that comes with age. You learn to conquer those fears. And
A little bit more knowledge, too.
Yeah.
Seen a few more things.
yeah, for sure. Life, the sun comes up tomorrow. Sometimes it feels like everything's going to blow up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not even reality.
Right.
It's just the stories we've spun.
Yeah, that's true.
So you have how many children?
Three.
Three.
Yep.
And what's the boys, girls? What's the spread look
Boy,
like?
girl, boy.
Okay.
6, 4, and 3 now.
That's tough to keep track of, huh?
Yeah, about to be. Well, this is always changing. Like, my youngest just turned 3. So the two older ones are about to turn 5 and 7 in August. See, I had my son first when I was still working at the gym, and I was really young dad. I was a firstborn too, so it's such an interesting pot. Like, you grow up so much with the first kid.
Absolutely.
Like, they get that kid and my son Liam, and our relationship is very deep because I chose, I think, to face those fears and the immaturities that I had.
Absolutely.
Because I had to, because it was hurting people around me when I wasn't being as good of a dad as I could have been at that moment, I guess.
Absolutely.
And I am a super, people would say I have OCD. I would say I have a perfectionism would be a better term.
Does that ever get taxing or exhausting?
I don't know, because at the same time I know it.
Personally, does it?
I don't think so, personally,
Yeah.
because I shoot for perfection. I just know that I'm never going to get it. I've just accepted that. A lot of people, I've ran into so many people, it's hard to talk about that concept with, because it's uncomfortable for them to think that they might not reach perfect.
That they may fail.
Yeah.
You're going to fail.
Yeah, 100%. You're going to fail over and over.
If you're
and
not,
over.
then you're not doing stuff to test
Right.
yourself, right?
That's true.
Hell yeah.
It's that initial fear is just something that's hard.
Yeah.
If someone's never done anything like that before too.
Yeah.
And that's what you deal with kids. Like, kids, they get afraid easily.
Absolutely.
And they don't necessarily want to do something that's afraid or fearful. So
or really, difficult. Or,
as a parent, it's your responsibility not to make them do it, to show them that you can do it first.
Yep.
I think, I was a little too focused on the fear. I was having kids really early because of fear, and I think at that moment in my life, I was operating more fear-based, all my decisions. And that's something that I think.
Do you think that had anything to do with how you felt about yourself or the journey you were on?
For sure.
Okay.
Anxiety is something I think it naturally comes along when the future is not looking good, like when the outlook is bleak.
Yeah.
And that's how it was for me at the time. And because I still, at that point when I had my firstborn, I still had not even thought about functional movement. I was still working in boot camp classes, kickboxing classes all the time. I was running my body 8 hours a day, sweating all day. My electrolytes were so off. I was cramping, not getting
Never
sleep.
took the time.
Never took the time to recover.
Either.
Yeah. I've always been the type of trainer, which made no sense. I was just there to help people, and forgot to help myself.
Yeah.
Definitely forgot to help myself, and I thought that people would be able to see the morality and the good in what I was doing, and that would be enough.
Right.
But the reality is, you need to show it. You have to walk the walk.
Absolutely.
Before you talk the talk.
Absolutely.
You can't do the talk before the walk, and you can't even do them together.
Right.
You got to walk the walk first.
Right. For a long time. It seems, yeah.
I think that's what I've been doing since my son was born. That's when things really changed. It was like I knew there's all those things I knew I wanted to fix. Like I'd always been trying to fix my structural issues, whether it was just always having a shoulder that was off. Like basically, it's just a calibration issue. Like think of your watch. Like if a watch isn't perfectly calibrated, it won't tell time.
1,000 ticks a second is going to add up. Yeah,
your body's the same way. If it's just not calibrated, if it's off even just a centimeter, you can tear something up. You can get an AC joint injury. That's probably the biggest one. AC separations that people get in their shoulders. And I think when you're doing a bench press, that's another one of those exercises where it's not a bad exercise. It's a great exercise to test your overall strength. But when you add it into your daily regimen and you train your body that this is how my arms move, it doesn't make sense to your brain.
That is a great thing to hear.
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense to your brain. Like every time you throw, your arms move in opposite directions. Every time you run, your arms are moving in opposite directions. It's just, when we walk like this.
Bipedal.
But one of the things that people have ran into that I don't think the average person, when they go to the gym, the gym itself has kind of made an environment where it doesn't facilitate those type of behaviors.
Right.
There's machines everywhere.
Yep.
They're a business, and they're focused on logistics.
Yep.
And they want to, you look at the space you have. How much money can I make out of this space?
How many people can we accommodate?
Right. And we definitely ran into that at Next Level because we didn't have a cap on some of the classes. We would let 120 people sign up for our 5 a.m. class.
That's a lot of people.
Which is an absolute preposterous, terrible idea. A bunch of people got injured just slipping on each other's sweat because of the amount of heat in that room. The whole floor would just be wet.
Something that you may not have even thought of in the beginning.
Right.
And then,
well, if you're the guy running the business, you're not thinking about that. You're
Yeah.
thinking of, I got 120 people paying this
Who wanna
much a
be here
month.
at 5.
I want to be here at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
We could just make it happen. Ask the trainers to make it happen. Can we make it happen? We'd go 3 to a bag, 4 to a bag.
Yeah.
Whatever we had to do, we would make it happen. It was good. It was good, but if people just knew what they were signing up for, like, I don't think people. I guess maybe they're not as if you were so focused on your physical fitness journey, maybe you'd go out and seek that information. But I don't think people are there yet, I guess.
Right.
It's something that it's such a luxury. Like being able to be fit, if you have a busy job and a busy life, it is such a luxury to be able to take care of your health, which sounds preposterous.
Yeah.
It really sounds preposterous. I know when people retire, I've heard doctors say, like, your new full-time job is your health. Well, I wish it was your part-time job forever.
Forever.
It should be your part-time job forever. It should be a part of your lifestyle. And it would prevent so many things down the line.
Absolutely.
And how do we instill that in our kids, man? I don't know. I'm trying.
You're trying.
I'm trying. I try to do it in front of them as much as possible.
So, like, having them see you working out.
Even simple stuff. If I'm thinking, well, I know this exercise is super challenging. I do a wide, ridiculous array of random exercises. I mean, a lot of wrestling exercises are probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Because it's strengthened areas of my body that I could never strengthen before, like my neck. Like I've always had neck issues training, and even I started to get really self-conscious. It's like my upper body's growing, but my neck's still skinny, But it's one of those things. Like as soon as you start training it, you realize, man, I wish I could go back in time.
Yeah.
And just it's your head again. It's your spine is attached to your head, and it's a great way to work your spine. Like even getting into like a reverse. I'm not really good at the word, but in gymnastics where they just bend
like a bend over.
Yeah.
Where
you just bend backwards.
Back bend.
Then just put all your weight on your head. Just try holding.
Yeah.
That. Just try holding.
Done
that.
it. Yeah.
And the one thing people even like the fascia that I'm talking about. The fascia even. There's some areas that are so dense, even in your scalp. Like I've had areas in my head that once I would put pressure on them or put my whole body weight on them, it would be so uncomfortable, so very uncomfortable. But but the reality is when you try to manipulate this fascial network in your body, that's actually the best way to become more mobile, I believe, because you can pinpoint where the problems are at.
Okay.
As opposed to if I'm going to stretch my shoulder, A lot of times people will stretch their whole arm. They'll stretch the bicep, the elbow really can become unstable and maybe just get torn apart in the process of trying to reach into your shoulder. But if you use something like the Theracane,
okay, and that's that thing you got right there.
super versatile.
I wouldn't even know how to start using that shit.
Yeah, well, they make a book. That's why I would recommend if anyone wants one of these. It's just called Theracane, like therapy. Theracane. They're made in Denver.
And this is used for what? For stretching?
It's used in physical therapy.
I've seen it. Yeah, I just have no clue what the
physical
hell it's for.
therapy. Yeah, every chiropractor, physical therapist probably has one of these. I recommend everyone has one. Like, it's just the simplest way to self medicate any tightness. So, like, think of like an area that's kind of hard to stretch. Yeah. But people feel a lot of tension.
A lot of times because they're on their computers or their phones all day.
I don't know how to stretch that. So what they usually do is they overstretch their neck.
Yeah.
They'll make their neck weak to hit a portion of that muscle.
Makes sense. And, I've done it.
So, again, this is the most intriguing part about the muscle fascial connection is we're able to we finally have the tools to deal with imbalances. Because we used to just think like one side was stronger than the other. But it's a little more complicated than that. The side that's weak might be calibrated incorrectly, and the side that's strong could also be calibrated incorrectly. Now, what that means is when you think of a muscle, it has two ends, an origin and insertion.
Okay.
Now, if all the tension is on one side, that's what the imbalance truly is. Like, think of a muscle imbalance is just think of a muscle like your bicep.
Yep.
If all the tension's on one side, that's a muscle imbalance.
Right.
And that alone can just kind of screw things up.
Cause tons of problems.
Can screw things up locally, but also it's almost always connected. But like a good one I like to use is your abdominals, because the abdominals, we use the word dysfunction a lot. I guess it would be whenever there's a muscle imbalance, you create a movement dysfunction.
Okay.
Because of that. Because of the limitation in the muscle, the fascia, the
Your brain will
ligaments,
just automatically do this.
It'll compensate, like you said before.
Okay.
The compensation pattern is a dysfunction.
Okay.
And that's how we address it. We address dysfunctions within the body.
Gotcha.
Is the best way to put it. So again, like this area, so simple, but you have a muscle that goes kind of from the back of your head down to your shoulder blade. It's called your levator scapula. It just elevates your scapula.
Okay.
Now, the problem for a lot of people is they don't know where the problem is at.
Right.
And it could be at the high point, it could be at the low point. It could have nothing to do with the side whatsoever. It could be that the other side is simply doing way too much of the work. Think of it as a game of tug of war. Like, your muscles need to have a nice balance in between. Yeah. If one side's way stronger, it tears the other side apart.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when people feel pain or discomfort,
might not even be that.
It's not. It's almost always the same muscle on the opposite side of the body.
Just wild.
Calibrated in a way that throws off the center, like the balance. Like it really is about. It comes down to balance and making sure things in alignment. And it's never going to be perfect. Like, nobody's got a perfectly straight spine or perfect posture.
Yeah.
It's just, how can it be better? Like, there's so many people that can be better. Or a lot of people have posture that's so good they're stuck there. Like, they can't even get into they can't bend their back.
And that's not good either.
And that's not good either. It's the same. Like, they wouldn't think that they have bad posture, but they're still they lack a lot of mobility in the spine.
Yeah.
Now, like you were saying earlier, how people just lose the mobility as they age. The biggest one in your thoracic spine. So think of the middle. Like, think of your rib cage. Think of this as your rib cage, and this is your hips. Okay. Now, like, these should be able to move independently without this, but so many people are blocky. I would say, because their spine and their fascia, or especially if you gain an excessive amount of weight, the first thing that happens is you can't move your trunk as much because there's just subcutaneous fat in the way. Yeah, and the muscles have no tone because of the digestive issues that people are usually dealing with if they're dealing with the weight gain and stuff. Yeah. It's usually more than just
huge,
extra
complex
weight.
issues.
But that's why it's so much easier for me to address the physical nature of someone and then let them kind of figure out everything else along the way.
Yeah.
Because if
you're just a guide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by guiding people through their physical journey, they can enhance their emotional journey or just their mental strength and stuff like that. But really, just what they do, like how happy they are on a day, just their daily mood.
Yeah.
Like I remember one of my favorite client of all time is going to be Lee because he came into me over 400 pounds.
That is wild.
He was sick. He's a 6'5", like giant dude. Had both his knees replaced. And he weighs 190 pounds right now.
Wow.
And he's living a great life. He didn't
a
gain
completely
it back.
different life than what he'd lived at once.
It's not. That's the thing I used to hate about training was that we would get people results, and I wouldn't see them for 6 months, and they'd come back, and they were worse off.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there. What did I even teach you? What did I instill in you? Like I look at it that way. Like I look at my clients. I'm a big brother. Like I was a Boy Scout. I've never had role models, so I wanted to become one.
Hell yeah.
I guess if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to become one so bad that that's all I'm focused on.
Yeah.
With my kids, if I try to teach you something and it doesn't work, like I don't get mad at you. I'm like, why did it not work?
That.
What do I have to do differently? Like just constantly being okay with you will never be perfect. That's the best way forward. I really think.
Absolutely.
It's hard to. It sounds negative, and I wish maybe someone one of these days somebody's going to say it better, and I'm going to be like, I'm stealing that.
Yeah, hell yeah.
But
no.
for me now, it's I shoot for perfection. I know I'm going to fall short, but the life, there's nothing else worth shooting for. Like Elon Musk says, if you shoot for the moon, you'll land somewhere in the stars.
Hell yeah.
And that's an easy one. I shoot for the moon. Like
Yeah.
I want to pretend someday in my brain I'm going to be Barry Sanders.
I love it.
And I guarantee if I do that, I'll be better off than
what you were.
I'll just be a little bit more athletic.
Absolutely.
I think my kids definitely have seen that's one thing that's been really good for the functional movement and stuff. It's transformed the way I move physically, I guess. Even things like rhythm, like I have better dance moves, something simple, like just more confidence with your body. I've noticed that from child to child, how it's been a benefit for them. So like my firstborn, he doesn't have as many physical gifts as my third child.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're all born a little bit different.
Yeah.
They have a completely different body style as well.
Isn't that wild how different in between they are? Completely different kids, same parent.
Just come straight out of the package.
Yeah, just
their own
different
thing.
as hell, yeah.
The body thing is the weirdest one to me because you'd think, because even like my brother has a kid, a son, and him and the mother of the child, they're both very long and tall and skinny. And their son is built like a brick house. Like
a tank?
He's got ridiculous muscle tone, and he's smaller and shorter, but just so compact and so explosive. And it's just
looks different.
It was in there. It's in the genes somewhere. It's in there, and you don't really ever know what's going to come out. You just like hope for the best and
use what
luckily,
you got.
I've been very lucky so far, but like I assume that's probably what it is. I also assume I do somewhat think me changing the way I move physically and constantly I do it in front of my younger kids much more because like I said, when I had my first son, I was still working at the gym.
Yeah.
And I was still doing everything at the gym. Like I didn't even have the mental strength to work out at home. Like I was so involved in the gym culture. It was my home. Yeah. It was my home. So I did it there. I was comfortable there. But once I started doing physical activity in front of my children, and as soon as they started seeing me struggle, I started seeing the wheels That's turning.
Awesome.
Like there's so many things about life that you can teach your kids that there's no blueprint for.
Right.
There's no TikTok video, roadmap, educational baby book for. There's a bunch of things that are intuitive or common sense we've lost so much of.
Mm-hmm.
But I've tried to use functional movement and martial arts just to give the kids a good example of change is possible.
Yeah.
Change is You're not just
stuck with what you got.
Stuck with what you got.
Hell yeah.
Or even more so just that you have power. You have the power
I love that.
to do whatever you want in life, but
that.
You got to work. You got to put in the work. You got to see me putting in the work.
Yeah.
Every day.
Well, how are they going to know?
Yeah. It's simple as just dropping down and doing a set of push-ups in front of them. Like I do a lot of weird exercises. I basically just test things on myself all day.
Okay.
Anything. The weird. So they definitely look at it with intrigue. There's definitely like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, Dad,
and have you seen them pick up on those sort of things?
Yeah, that's the best feeling ever. Like sometimes my son, he's 6 now. I've tried to teach him. Another thing is like even like a lot of kids don't like to go outside. like or even just the sun exposure. Like sometimes if he's not feeling well, I was like, well, just go lay in the sun, do some push-ups or something. Get outside,
some fresh air.
But he does it on his own now. Like it's nice when you see kids do things without you. They just come to you and say, "Hey, Dad,
Absolutely.
Because usually it'll be like we're waiting for maybe the youngest one's taking a nap.
Yeah.
And we want to go to the park, but we got to wait for them to get back. And he gets real bored, starts to get anxious. And if you get anxious, do something.
Yeah.
You know, try to teach your kids to deal with the same things you deal with.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if we're not going to teach them, who's going to teach them to do it? And that seems to have completely fucking fall off.
Yeah, unfortunately. I don't know how your parents were, but did they talk about their emotions at all?
My mom worked all the time, and I didn't have a dad. My dad wasn't around.
Yeah.
So no emotion
didn't
talk.
know what
Hell
that
no.
was about at all.
Dude. Yeah.
And it's hard when you're a man and you're in adulthood. People
very hard.
They kind of expect you to already know that kind of
very
stuff.
Very hard.
Like,
yes.
I'm a little infantile in this frame of reality. I have just not spent the time or effort on mental health because there's things that need to be done.
Yeah,
and men do
shit.
them. Things need to be fixed, and who's going to fix them? But teaching them through seeing it is the first thing. You can't just say it. I don't like telling my kids anything.
I love that.
I like showing them everything.
Yeah. And like you said, you can't, you have to do before you talk, or nobody's going to believe it.
No one's going to believe you. Yeah. No one will have any respect for you.
And your kids, they're the same way. You can tell them till you're blue in the face, but if you're not willing to put in the work and do,
if they'll call you out without without even needing to call you out. But if you see that they're not receptive to something, you're like, well, maybe I'm not doing a good job of this. That's modeling.
That's fair. Yeah.
And those are always hard pills to swallow, but they are always good. Like every time something bad happens, your life gets better.
Yep.
Almost, unless it's catastrophic and terrible. And luckily, usually you have people around you to pick you up after that. But little things, just those little things every day that people are afraid of. Just the little failures, those little tiny failures. But the more of those you can mount, the more of those you can stack up, the more resilient you are.
Hell yeah.
The stronger you are.
Hell yeah. Before you get out of here, we're running short on some time. I got to take you to the firing range. So I know it sounds so crazy, but it's not. It's this or that. You just speak whatever one comes to you.
Okay.
So like chocolate, sweets or sour, and then you pick. But it's not that, so don't worry. This segment of the firing range is sponsored by Pixel Labs. Grow your business with a marketing strategy focused on real business outcomes. Thank you, Zach and Sam, for all that you do for me. I appreciate all your support with the podcast. Ready to rock and roll? Your first one is, are you a meat or fish kind of guy?
Meat.
Some of these I know, but it's for everybody to help.
Red meat.
Veggies or fruit?
Fruit.
Stoplights or roundabouts?
Roundabouts are cool.
Very good. 5 a.m. or 5 p.m.?
Both.
All right.
Let's do both.
Cardio or weights? I know.
Both.
You got to pick one.
Weights.
Come
I'm
on.
picking weights.
Okay. Heavy bag or a speed bag?
Heavy bag.
Are you a puncher or a kicker?
Puncher.
Are you taking oceans or the mountains?
Mountains.
Run or bike?
Run.
And your last one, are you going to do 100 push-ups, 100 squats, or 100 lunges?
All of them.
Oh, yeah, dude. I love it. Luke, thank you so much for your time, dude. We had a great conversation about all the things that are important in life, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Could have done it forever, but I'm glad that you cut it perfect time.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you, sir.